Awesome, awesome. Well, good morning, everybody. Good to see you all. Good to see you all. This is great. This is great. As you notice, like when my wife's not here, I'm up here. But when my wife's with me, I'm down there. There's just, she's not here to help me up on the stage. Just one of those things. But it's good to see everybody. How you guys doing over here? You doing good? Didn't get to see you earlier, but I see you now. You doing good? Good to see you. It's just been a whirlwind of a week. Things have been happening. It's been a great week. Just so happy to be here. So I just want to kind of get into it. Like this week, the title of our sermon this week is Get Out of the Boat. And I've been reading a book by John Ortberg. If you want to walk on water, you got to get out of the boat. If you want to be challenged at all, that's an awesome book to read. It's challenging me a lot. But it's taken off of Matthew 14, 22 through 33. And I want to start by reading a quote from Theodore Roosevelt. And it states, it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, who at best knows in the end the triumph of great achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place will never be with those who cold, timid souls who know neither victory or defeat. In Matthew 14, we see a man who was willing to get in the arena, who wasn't going to allow the doubts or fears to stop him from requesting to do something that was not humanly possible. He was going to walk on water. He blocked out the storm, the chaos, and he fixed his eyes on the Almighty and he said, if it's really you, let me come to you. Peter was ready to achieve something, and even if he sank, he at least dared greatly. He wasn't one of the other disciples looking on from the boat. Peter got out of the boat. And before we read Matthew 14, 22 through 33, I just want to set the scene for you. Earlier that day, or maybe a couple of days before, Jesus' cousin, John the Baptist, was beheaded by King Herod. And John's disciples came, took the body, and they buried it. And then they came and told Jesus. And upon hearing the news, Jesus decided he needed to get away to a remote area so he could, I believe, could grieve and pray and have that time with the Father to really just think about these things. And so as he got in the boat to go to this remote area, his popularity grew so much that people kind of got an idea of where he was going. And so all these people from different towns kind of went ahead of him and walked to where he was headed. So when the boat got to where he was going, which was supposedly this remote area, he saw this massive crowd of people. And Jesus, being Jesus, he felt compassion for these people. And so he taught them, and he healed the sick, and he healed many of them and gave them his attention. And as time went in throughout the day, his disciples urged Jesus. He's like, the day is late. They came from far away. You need to send them home so they can go get food and all that. And Jesus is like, no, we need to take care of this here. And this is where he fed the 5,000. So they scurried up 5 baskets of bread, or 5 bread, 2 fish. He broke it, blessed it, and they gave out all this food. And they had over 12 baskets left. So all of this happened after the news that Jesus heard from that his cousin got killed. He got swept straight into ministry. And so when this was done, it takes us right into 14 that we're going to get into right here. And it says in 14:22, Jesus says, he immediately, after he fed the 5,000, he said, immediately after this, in verse 22, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake while he sent the people home. So he's like, you guys go. I'm going to send the people home. You guys take off. And he did this purposely so he could have this time when they were gone so he could be alone. And so after sending them home in 23, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. And night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile, disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them walking on water. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost." But Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage, I am here." Then Peter called to him, "Lord, if it is really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water." "Yes, come," Jesus said. So Peter went over to the side of the boat and walked on the water toward Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. "You have so little faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" When they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped. Then the disciples worshiped him. "You really are the Son of God," they said. When we look at this passage in the Bible, we're going to look at three things. We're going to see how we can dare greatly, we're going to expect obstacles, and we're going to grow faithfully. And we look at daring greatly. It just reminds me of a story when I was younger. I was about 8 or 9. I was at this pool when I lived in Kenosha, Wisconsin. It was a big pool. And they had these diving boards, and they're all different sizes. You know, you had the little ones, the little bit bigger, medium. Then they had, you know, the high diving board. And, you know, not to brag on myself, but I was pretty good on the little ones. Like I was running and jumping. I was doing really good on those. And so I was kind of showing off and I was pretty confident on that stuff. And so I'd get to that, and I'd do the little bit higher ones. I was pretty good, doing really good on them. And I kept looking at that high dive. And I'm like, I'm going to make that one. And so I'd start walking to the high dive. I'd walk over to it. I'd look at it. And then I'd walk on by, and I'd go to the little boards again. Then I'd come back, and I'd be, oh, now's the time. And I'd walk to the high dive, look at it, and I'd walk past it again. I'm like, I just couldn't do it. Finally, I'm like, I gotta take the plunge. I gotta try it. And I looked around. No one was at the high dive. No one was in line. No one was there. And I'm like, now is the time. Because even if I got scared halfway up, no one was in line. I could easily climb back down. So I went to the high dive. I quickly started climbing up. I just looked to the top. I'm like, if I kept looking up, no fear, no worries. I wouldn't have to see how far I was. Nothing. So I started climbing up. I got about 3/4 of the way up. All of a sudden, I hear this noise below me. Well, lo and behold, a line of kids started climbing up the ladder behind me. And not only that, but there's a line of kids behind them. So now I had no choice. I either had to go all the way to the top, or I had to tell these kids, hey, I need to come back down because I just couldn't do it. And lo and behold, I looked down, so then I'm kind of freaking out because I'm like, well, I'm pretty high up. I don't know what I'm doing. So I made the choice. I went to the top, and I grabbed onto both rails. You know, you have those rails at the top, and I'm just standing there. And it seemed like forever. The kids are yelling at me. The lifeguard's blowing her whistle at me, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I could either, I could jump, or I could go back down, jump, go back down. I didn't know what. Finally, I made the decision. I went back down. I'm like, I can't do this. I can't make the jump. So I had to do the embarrassing thing of going and asking all these kids, can you guys please get off the ladder? I have to crawl back down. And so I'm crawling back down the ladder, knowing everybody is staring at me, probably talking about me, all these different things. I can feel it. I can feel it. And so I get to the bottom, And I'm like, I got to the bottom. I'm just like, I don't know. When I got to the bottom, two things could have happened. First thing that could have happened is this, that I never tried to go off the diving board ever again. That I never, ever went to that high dive again because I didn't want to ever experience that embarrassment, and I never want to try that failure ever again. And the second thing that could happen is I mustered the strength and courage to give it another try and succeed where I once failed. Well, I ended up choosing option 2. But I tell you, I didn't go back up that day. I'm telling you that much. I wasn't about to face these kids that day, that's for sure. But I did end up going the next day. I jumped off the high dive. Then I jumped off it again and again and again. It was such an amazing experience that I was able to enjoy. But I almost allowed fear to hold me back from enjoying that moment. And this is something that Peter had to deal with. Let's look at his situation for a moment. He was one of the disciples in the boat that was being whipped back and forth in such a violent storm. It was strong enough storm that these professional sailors were having trouble trying to keep the boat afloat. And they were worried. I mean, they're in the boat every day. They're out there all the time. And they were worried about this storm. So you can imagine what kind of a storm it was if they were worried about this. And this darkness night. So these were the conditions that Peter was facing when he was asking himself to get out of the boat. So let me tell you, it would be hard enough to get out of the boat and walk on water when the water is calm. I know I haven't been able to do it. I've tried. I'm sure some of you have tried. You've probably tried to walk on water. Really? Am I the only one? Yeah. Are you serious? You have not tried to walk on water? Come on now. Anybody else try to walk? Yeah, Ingrid, I know. Yep, Sean, I knew. Yeah, exactly. We've all had to try. I mean, I know. Yeah. So even in calm water, we haven't been able to do it. But imagine doing it when waves are crashing. I mean, imagine doing it in such rough water. Just imagine doing it at all. What would you do? The boat is something you're familiar with if you're Peter. You work with it daily. Even in this weather and all the chaos, you find comfort in the boat. The water is the unknown. It's the uncertainty. It's the risk. And this is where the questions come into our head. What if I don't succeed? What if I mess up? How do I come back from that? What will people say? I know if I try this, all the eyes will be on me. These are all questions when we step out into something unknown that we ask ourselves. Now, I believe there's someone inside us who tells us there's more than life sitting in the boat. You're made for more. You're made to walk on water and live in the abandoned adventure of following God and what He has for you. But if you want to walk on water, you got to get out of the boat. So what's your boat? Your boat is whatever represents safety and security to you apart from God Himself. Your boat is whatever you're tempted to put your trust in, especially when life gets a little stormy. Your boat is whatever keeps you so comfortable that you don't want to give it up, even if it keeps you from joining Jesus on the waves. Want to know what your boat is? Your fear will tell you. Just ask yourself this. What is it that most produces fear in me, in you, especially when I think of leaving it behind and stepping out in faith? Think about that. What is it that most produces fear in me, especially when I think of leaving it behind and stepping out in faith? For somebody, it can be a job they're in or something they want to try doing. Others, it can be in a relationship that isn't right, that they need to get out of and not sure how. But no, it is the right thing to do. Some of it is stepping up more in the church, being in ministry and supporting and serving wherever God calls you. Maybe your boat is always trying to get approval, whether it be from family or friends, trying to always be a people pleaser, but knowing you need to do certain things just for you. So what is your boat? Take a moment. Think about it. For Peter, all he knew was that Jesus wasn't in the boat, and he wanted to go to him. So sometimes leaving it will be the hardest thing you'll ever do. But if you want to walk on water, you have to get out of the boat. But when you do that, you're going to expect obstacles. In Matthew 14:30, it says, Peter then saw the wind. I mean, come on, Peter was doing it. He was doing something that could not be done. He was walking on the water. He got out of the boat and made his way towards Jesus. In that moment, nothing else mattered. It was just Jesus and Peter. And Peter asked the all-important question, if it is you, tell me to come to you. And Jesus said, come. There was no doubt. There was no fear. Peter took the step of faith that no one else would take. It was something that happened on his way towards Jesus. It's the same things that happen to us when we finally commit to getting out of our boat. We see the obstacles. We see the distractions. Fear rises up in us. Doubt overwhelms us. We start to look around us at everything around us, and we see panic, and we begin to sink. Just like Peter, he was on his way towards Jesus. But he took his eyes off him, and he noticed the strong wind and the waves and the rain. He realized what he was doing and the possibility of all of that. And all these thoughts and doubts and fears had crept in his head, and he began to sink. What I find amazing about all that is that the wind, the waves, the impossibility, all of that was already there. It shouldn't have come as a surprise to Peter. It shouldn't have caught him off guard. He was already dealing with all of those things before he made the decision to get out of the boat. The difference was his focus. He didn't focus on the impossibility. He focused on Jesus. He didn't focus on the waves. He focused on Jesus. He didn't focus on the winds. He focused on Jesus. He didn't focus on his doubts. He focused on Jesus. And he didn't focus on his fears. He focused on Jesus. What are we focusing on? Are we focusing on every reason why we can't or why it's impossible? Are we focusing on our fear? Fear of loss? Fear of shame? Fear of failure? Fear of fill in the blank? Sometimes it's because of these obstacles that some of us never get out of the boat. We keep waiting for the waves to calm down, the wind to be still, our fear to go away. So because of this, we never get out of the boat. We stay in the comfort we have created around us. We stay in the comfort that we have created around us. Everything is risky. There's not only danger in getting out of the boat, but there's danger in staying in the boat. If you stay in the boat, you may not ever experience the life God has for you. Just like David, he never would have fought Goliath. Or Moses may never have confronted Pharaoh on behalf of the Israelites. Or Esther may never have pleaded with the king to save her people from a plot to exterminate them. Or Paul, who was called to preach to the same people he persecuted. The choice to follow Jesus is a choice to grow. The choice to follow Jesus is the choice to grow. And we must grow faithfully. When we choose to grow, it is a choice for the constant recurrence of fear. Meaning, we've got to get out of the boat a little every day, which can be scary. The fear will never go away. Why? Because each time we want to grow, it will involve going into new territory, taking on new challenges. And each time we do that, we'll experience fear again. When Peter chose to get out of the boat, he conquered his fear for that moment, and he took a step or two on the water. But then fear rushed in again, and he began to sink. But something amazing happened. As he was sinking, a hand reached down to help him out. Jesus was there and pulled him back up on the water. Peter stepped out boldly, but he didn't step out alone. And Jesus was with him, watching and waiting. And what's cool is this, is after Jesus pulled up Peter out of the water, he mentored him by saying, Peter, you have so little faith. Why did you doubt me? And a lot of times people look at that as an angry statement or a belittling statement. I look at it as a mentoring statement of, you had it, Peter. You stepped out. You had this. Why'd you doubt? I feel he's mentoring Peter, saying, you can do this. I don't feel like Jesus was angry with Peter or disappointed. He was just like, you got this. And what I like about this is Jesus said this to Peter on the water, away from everybody, in the quiet, kind of before he got with the disciples. So he said that to Peter, then they got it back in the boat. You don't have to doubt me, he says. I got you. We don't have to doubt who Jesus is. He's got us. We can step out into the unknown knowing that Jesus is with us. We can step out knowing that he's got us. Did Peter fail? Did the 11 disciples in the boat fail? Peter was willing to take a step and fall, but the 11 were content to stay in the boat. Peter determined one thing about this situation, and that was he wanted to be with Jesus. And the one thing that he knew at that moment was Jesus was not in the boat. The waters where Jesus was, and that's where Peter was headed. Jesus is looking for people who will get out of the boat. But why? It's the only way to real growth. It's the way true faith develops. And it's part of discovering and obeying your calling. But if you get out, I believe two things will happen. And then when you fail, and you will fail sometimes, Jesus will be there to pick you up. You will not fail, you will not fall alone. you'll find that he is still wholly and adequate to save in every situation. And then the second thing is every once in a while, you will walk on the water. You will walk on the water. And so as we close in prayer, I really want to make I feel like right now as we look into this, I want us to think about this. I actually think about it earlier, but I want you to think about it again. What is your boat? I feel like there's a few of us in here, maybe all of us, that God has been speaking to about our boats, about something that we need to step out of or step into. And I feel like he's wanting us to answer that call in some form or fashion. And so I'm going to, as the keys are being played, I just want to make it say, like, if you're ready to take a stand and ready to step out and answer the call and step out of the boat and walk to where Jesus is, I just want you to stand up right now where you're at. And I'm gonna be one of them. There's things in my life that Jesus is saying, I just need you to step up and step out. If you're one of those that are ready to step out and walk toward Jesus, saying, this is where I need you to go. Quit acting in fear, quit acting in doubt, quit acting in whatever it is. I'm not going to make you come up front, not going to make you do it, but Jesus is saying, now is the time, because the church needs to act, church needs to move. The Lord is calling us to step through, and step out, and be Peters. And it's not going to be necessarily easy. It's not going to be, you're going to experience obstacles, you're going to experience rough waters, you're going to experience setbacks, but that's what community is for. That's what church is for. That's what we're for. That's what the Lord is for. He will help. Throwing this at you, but I feel like it's something. I just feel like
sometimes, Lord, it is our way not to have the mind of Christ, but to have our own mind. And we are encouraged time and time again that the mind of Christ, His Spirit that lives in us, will guide and lead. And we spend a lot of time thinking about, but what if? What if this happens, or what if that happens, or what if I lose this friend? Or what if there are people that normally admonish and encourage me that suddenly don't want to be around me? What if I don't know where I'm going? What if I'm stuck in a place where I'm not there yet, but I'm not where I used to be? And so our mind goes on and on and on. We learn in the Old Testament that disobedience is as the sin of witchcraft. We want to go our own way. Witchcraft is a manipulation, and we want really to do what we want to do in our life. But you told Saul, that's not my way. I asked you to do something, Saul, and you didn't do it. You could have done it, but you didn't do it. Now here we live in the dispensation of grace and in the place where God has said to us, I've given you my Spirit. I've given you the face of God on the face of the earth. I've given you the third person of the Trinity that will walk with you, talk with you, lead you, guide you, do everything that needs to happen so that you can walk into the goodness of God without regret and without fear. So understand, my people, that here's the deal. The enemy is like a lion who roams around, and he's looking for the one he can lie to tell them that you can't do that. You don't know how to do it. That's not God. He's not telling you that. But I'm asking you today to cast that care on God. Cast the care on me. And walk with the best friend I ever gave you, the Holy Spirit that lives inside you, that lives and breathes. To guide you in your every movement. I never told any of you to do anything in here that I've not provided my grace for. Jesus fell 3 times on the way to living his destiny. 3 times. And each time he got up, he didn't move back, he moved forward. And he did it with the conviction that his Father had given him, and he did it in the presence of a Holy Spirit that was cheering him on. You only have to take the first step, and there he will meet you. If you don't take the first step, he can't do that for you. That's not what a relationship is. Please take the first step today, no matter how small it is, no matter how frightened you are. But do it in him. The Israelites said, we will not go up if you don't go with us. And so he gave them a cloud by night and a fire by day, and they only moved when those things moved. Move at his encouragement. Move knowing you may fail, but you can always get up. He's just looking for you to move. Nothing more. There's nothing more. You mustn't try to plan it all. You must just move. So we thank you, Lord, that you are good to us, that you always have a way of speaking to us, that you always have a word in time to us. And so we know that if we ask, Lord, that you would give us wisdom and revelation and the knowledge of you, that the eyes of our understanding would be enlightened, and that all things that are impression against you and against your word in our lives, that those things are under our feet and will remain under our feet as you have put them there. When we ask, we know that we receive. There's only one other thing. He said that we would be healed if we would confess our faults one to another. I don't know how that looks for each of you, but whatever the faults are, they have to be confessed. Not in a sense of shame, but in a sense of hope. That there continues to be the blood of Christ to cover that thing for us so we can move in the direction he's called us to move. We bless you. We ask you, Lord, to bless us and to keep us and to raise your countenance upon us. And as we move, Lord, bring us peace. In Jesus' name.